many people who will know The Artist is Present. It was performed by Marina Abramovic, the famous former performance artist from the former Yugoslavia. She created a performance piece at MoMA, at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and she spent 75 days sitting in a chair opposite whoever would come and sit, and she would maintain eye contact with them for 75 days over the course of the hours of the museum. So on Tuesday, the museum is closed, but she, at 10:30 every morning, she'd be sitting in her chair, the crowds would rush up, we'd all sit around the square that had been marked off on the floor, and people would line up to sit in the chair with her. And they would sit for as long as they could or wanted to. And it was an extraordinary thing, but it's not how I started with Marina Abramovic. I had started with her about 5 or 6 years before, when I came across a photograph of one of her performances that had been in Italy in 1976, I think it was, and it was called Rhythm Zero. And Marina, as a young woman, had put 72 items on a table, and they included a bottle of oil, a rose, a feather, a loaf of bread, and then it also included a whip, a knife, a gun, and a bullet. And she invited the audience at this gallery over the course of 6 hours to do whatever they wanted to her. She would remain impassive. And when I read that on the side of this photograph, I was like, who does that? And then the next bit said, Marina Abramovic is also known for another piece where she walked across the Great Wall of China from the east, and her partner, who walked from the west, and they met in the middle to end their relationship. And I thought, who is so brave that they're willing to let an audience do whatever they like, and they nearly killed her on that night with 72 items, and then is so romantic that she feels this need to walk 3,000 miles to say goodbye to the man she loves. And I thought, that's a really good character for a novel. And 11 years later, I had a novel. That was Born of New York. There's another bit of travel. So I'd been doing all this research, I'd been reading all these books, and I'd been working out of the Museum of Modern Art in Hobart, which is our wonderful gallery. And the librarian there said to me, do you know that Marina's got a show coming next year in New York? And I thought, oh, I better work out how to get there. So I went to New York to observe The Artist is Present. So I'm on the sidelines every day, and I'm going back to my unrenovated Chelsea Hotel room that nevertheless, despite having, all the craziness of the Chelsea Hotel, this particular room had a piano in it. It had a beautiful walnut upright piano. And I remember walking into the room one night after sitting all day, watching people sit opposite Marina, taking my notes about the whole thing. And there was someone sitting at the piano. There wasn't really, of course, but in my mind, I saw this man sitting at the piano, and I was like, oh, that's the lens through which I am to see this book. And so Aki is a composer. He has recently had a split with his longtime film director friend. He's always done the music for these, he's always scored the music for films for his friend. He's had a very successful career, been nominated for some, various prizes. And then his friend decided that he would use a younger composer. And so Aki's had this terrible loss in his career, but perhaps even worse, although he doesn't necessarily think that, is that his wife Lydia has had a long-term chronic illness that now has escalated, and she has put herself into a nursing home, and she's told him that he can't visit. And he is shattered, of course, by all these things in his life coming together at a very similar time. And he's lost a relationship with his daughter because of all this happening and the way he's behaved about it. And I mean, a wife doesn't say that to her husband without good reason. And so we go through this unfolding that as he goes to the Museum of Modern Art to see a Tim Burton show and then is drawn into the atrium where Marina is sitting. And he's so compelled by the silence and by the focus that she's bringing, which is not dissimilar, as you and I both know, to how composers work anyway. They're listening, they're observing, they're deeply focused. They're listening for what we can't hear often, what notes are happening, what what instrument might that be? And so he is sitting there hoping that something will happen to help him with this new score that he's writing for an anime, for a Japanese anime. And it's a very passionate young Japanese director, and he needs a breakthrough. He's having a crisis. And a woman, a not dissimilar age to him, is also compelled by Marina's performance. And she's called Jane, and she helps him navigate a little bit. He's not very navigable, Archie. He's a very slow learner. But there's a great sort of silence in the novel that I really enjoyed because Marina is so silent. The artwork itself, the artist is present. It was such a silent and beautiful performance that was rich in emotion. People would sit down and they would just start crying. And to try and find words for that and to put a plot around it was such a big challenge. But I loved writing that book.